Hello, and welcome to the Wine Educate podcast. This is episode 87, and I am your host, Joanne Close. And today we're continuing on with Beaujolais. So we covered Beaujolais Nouveau last week. Well, it was Beaujolais Nouveau Day, but we need to cover the rest of Beaujolais. So some of the other appellations, and I want to touch upon a little bit of its history and also its future, where it's going, because there's some really interesting things happening in Beaujolais at the moment. Okay, so where are we? We are still in France, and we are sort of sandwiched in between Burgundy and the Rhone. We have a moderate climate here. Beaujolais gets all the seasons, all 4 seasons, and we're 34 miles long from north to south and 7 to 9 miles wide, running from the Mâconnais to Lyon. We can roughly think about Beaujolais in 2 sections. We have the northern and western vineyards, and these sites are going to be a little hillier, and this is where you get this granite, this pink granite that your book mentions. And in the south, the vineyards tend to flatten out a bit and are a little bit more fertile. And as you may imagine, this is going to affect the styles of the wines made in these different areas. A bit of history here. Starting with the Romans, this region was positioned firmly on one of the Roman trade routes and also was an area where when a Roman retired, they were given a plot of land and some vines and maybe a little farm, and this was their retirement. So it's really interesting, but some of the names here can be directly tied back to some of these Romans. So Bruy was named after the Roman lieutenant Brulius. Fleury, also named after the Roman legionary Florius. And Juliana, well, you guessed it, Julius, as in Julius Caesar. So the Romans left their mark and made wines here, and when they faded away, the monks took over. I have to say that given the choice back in the day, if I had to choose in medieval times where I would land, I think I'd be a monk. I don't think it would be such a bad deal, especially one of the monks that was in charge of making wine and brewing beer. When this is your main job and you don't get interrupted and you can make copious notes and pass these books on down to other monks, well, as we know, this is how Burgundy got mapped out and all the Premier Cru and Grand Cru. Well, sort of the same situation here in Beaujolais, and the monks got the little books out and they mapped out the areas and discovered where the better sites were. After the monks, the nobles took over in the region, and there was a bit of a feud going on between Beaujolais and Burgundy. And by this, I mean Burgundy did not want any Gamay planted in their wine region. And this has to be one of the biggest smear campaigns going on in wine history. And there's a very famous quote. So I have it here. I'm going to read it to you. It's a little wordy, but it is absolutely my favorite wine quote in history. I think it's really hilarious. So this fellow, Philippe the Bold, decided that he really didn't want any Gamay in Burgundy and made it his life's mission to make it so. So here's one of his quotes. A very bad and disloyal variety called Gamay. And this wine of Gamay is of such a kind that it is harmful to human creatures, so much so that many people who have had it in the past were infested by serious diseases, as we've heard, because said wine from said plant of said nature is full of significant and horrible bitterness. For this reason, we solemnly command you, all who have said vines of said Gamay, to cut them down or have them cut down wherever they may be in our country within 5 months. Wow. This sentiment was not just isolated to Philippe the Bold. Many other folks felt the same way, and ultimately were pretty successful in kicking Gamay out of Burgundy and pushing it down into the Beaujolais region. But in actuality, this wasn't really such a terrible thing because it turns out that the Gamay grape actually does better in Beaujolais because of this pink granite. This is low nutrient soil, and Gamay can be prone to going a little crazy if it gets the nutrients, and then it puts all of its energy into shoots and leaves and big bunches, and it doesn't result in very nice wine. So the best quality comes from these poor granite soils. The vines here are trained in gobelets, in these bush vines. Indeed, when it's trained that way, it necessitates hand harvesting, right? And indeed, for Beaujolais Nouveau and the Crus, it's required that they hand harvest. They are increasing the amount of grapes that are put on these wires for mechanization. It makes it easier, right? Some of the Beaujolais Village, you're seeing more of this mechanization happening. And then on the steep and hilly vineyard sites in the north and western area is where we get these better quality sites. So when we look at the Beaujolais appellation hierarchy, it becomes really clear. If you're looking at a map and you can see the southern part of Beaujolais is dedicated to Beaujolais AOC. Remember, this is the flatter area, a bit more fertile. And then the northwestern area, that's why we find more Beaujolais Village and certainly the Crus. All right, so let's talk about these each one by one. Beaujolais AOC got its appellation in 1937. It represents about 34% of the total production in Beaujolais. Gamay is the hero grape here and makes up the majority of the wines. We do have a few other grapes that grow here, a little bit of Chardonnay. Some Pinot Noir did trickle down, but it is predominantly Gamay. This is the flatter land, so it makes the lightest, most simple wines. The next step up is Beaujolais Village AOC. This got its appellation in 1938 and makes about 26% of the total production. And here we're in the northwestern region, and we're in these hills. These village wines can come from 39 named villages. They can affix their name to the Beaujolais Village appellation, but it's really not common. Most of the Beaujolais Village end up being a blend of wines from the different villages themselves. These wines are going to have a little bit more color, a little more depth, and minerality due to this pink granite. Okay, and now we get to the 10 Beaujolais Crus. Boy, New Orleans people have really embraced Beaujolais. I think I went to 3 Beaujolais parties this weekend. It was really a lot of fun. So, from north to south, we have Saint-Amour, Juliana, Chena, Moulin Avant, named for the famous windmill that's there, Fleury, Cherouble, Morgon, Renier, Bruy, and Côte de Bruy. So that's a fun party trick if you can learn all 10 crus and rattle them off. Fancy. But don't sweat it. If you're a level 2 student, you just need to know Fleury. And if you are a level 3 student, you need to know Moulin Avant, Fleury, Morgon, and Bruy. Moulin Avant and Morgon are more of the structured, bigger style. They have an ability to age a little bit. So when we're talking about Beaujolais and Beaujolais Village, those wines are really meant to be enjoyed fairly young. Fresh, fruity. They don't have really any extended aging capacity. But when we talk about the Crus, these wines do have a little bit of that potential for aging, especially Moulin Avant and Morgon, maybe something like 5, possibly 10 years. Fleury and Bruy are lighter, more of perfumed style, and made for more early drinking. I will say that in my lifetime, I don't think I'll ever become a Burgundy expert. And it's not for lack in trying. It's because I don't have the pocketbook. But when it comes to Beaujolais and the Crus, there is a real opportunity here for everyday drinkers to do some collecting, do some exploring. These 10 Crus make up some really wonderful wines within Beaujolais itself. And this leads me into talking a little bit about the future of Beaujolais, because, my friend, there are some exciting things happening here. In 2003, the National Gamay Conservatory started looking into all the different clones of Gamay that are grown here, and they have since collected about 1,000 different types, which is fascinating. And then in 2009, the region began a really thorough soil assessment. And I'm not saying this to stress you out, because you just need to know granite for level 3. But they found 300 different soil variations. I hope that didn't raise your blood pressure. What it should have done is made you excited, because it just goes to show that there is a lot of exciting variety here of soil types in Beaujolais. And then, and this is super duper new, in 2024, some folks in Fleury have officially done all the paperwork and applied to elevate some of their LUDI, their recognized special growing sites, to get them approved to be Premier Cru status. And other crus are also following suit and doing the paperwork. Now, this can take a while. This could take like 8 to 10 years. But just know that this is in the works and very interesting. You may not be able to invest in DRC, but you could buy a case of a Fleury Ludi wine and taste it over time. There's a lot of fun to be had with collecting in this wine region. So as I mentioned last week, I am going to go into greater detail about carbonic maceration, semi-carbonic maceration, and whole cluster. So that's going to be reserved for my level 3 podcast, which is coming out in the new year. Happy Thanksgiving to my stateside folks. And I know you're still going to be drinking Beaujolais. So if you have any Nouveau that you're cracking open, email me or tag on Instagram, WineEducate on Instagram, joanne@wineeducate.com, because I've been having a lot of fun receiving your emails, especially folks that are in other countries, to see what Beaujolais Nouveau you get, right? Thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you all next week.